Hello, everyone. Good afternoon to all the participants of today's webinar. We see we already have quite some participants in the list, so we will already get started now. Again, thanks for joining today. Thanks for joining the second webinar of the ULTIMO project, which today really takes us a step further, not looking at maybe local deployments, but at the larger strategic roadmaps of automated public transport, turning visions into reality. Today is structured around three key speakers. We have Thomas Dreves, the head of autonomous driving at Deutsche Bahn Regio in Germany. We also have Michael Talbot. He's the deputy head founding member of the UK's Government Centre for Connected and Autonomous Vehicles. And we also have Julian Sandiano, who's the head of business unit and product development at the public transport operator in the city of Monheim in Germany. And myself, Christian Riester. I'm originally from Germany, but I'm now am based in Barcelona, where I'm co-leading the automated mobility team here at the innovation consultancy BAX. Spent my last 6 years essentially working with cities, regional governments, and transport authorities all over Europe, essentially on the integration of automated mobility in public transport, building roadmaps, creating access to finance, and also work on or within European collaborations such as ULTIMO. So yes, let's kick it off. What to expect from today's webinar. As you see, we're starting with a short introduction about the participants, but also about what ULTIMO is, what the project is about very briefly, if in case some of you don't know much about it yet. Then we'll have around 1 hour of presentations from our speakers that I mentioned before. We will have essentially a speaking slot and then 5, 6, or 7 minutes of Q&A. So please use the Q&A function that you see in the control panel, ideally. You can also upvote other people's questions if you see them relevant or interesting for you as well. And then I will basically look at the list of questions and ask our speakers after the presentation. We'll repeat that 3 times and then end with an interactive discussion using Slido, hopefully engaging in a insightful discussion there as well, and then close after 1.5 hours. So that's it for our agenda for today. What is ULTIMO about? Essentially, the objective of ULTIMO, which is a project funded through Horizon Europe, so from the European Commission, but also from the Swiss government. It's essentially to deploy first economically viable deployments of automated vehicles in public transport, with a big focus on demand responsiveness, shared rides, so not just providing individual taxi services, and also trying to interlink with other sectors such as logistics. So how can vehicles be used not just for public transport, but also for the movement of goods? It's a big project. You can imagine we're right in the middle of it, so you can expect a lot of more outcomes in the next months and years. As I said, from the EU and Switzerland, here you see a summary of all the partners. Essentially, it's a collaboration of public transport authorities, operators, but also the private sector side with tech providers and mobility consultancies such as us and BAX. But also network organizations holding it all together, giving the wider outlook at UTP, and very cutting edge research institutes as well. I refer back to the website that we have for more detailed insights. I said we want to deploy the first economically viable vehicles in public transport. Where does the project aim to do that? In Germany, it's in Herford. In Switzerland, it's in an area around Geneva, and in Oslo, in Norway, it's in the Grorud Valley. So with no further ado, I think I hope I could give you a quick intro into the project. But now we will first hear from Thomas Dreves from Deutsche Bahn about their visions. So yeah, Thomas, please kick it off.
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk here today. I will share my screen and no, okay. Yeah, thank you very much. So why is a model region or model regions the next right step for the autonomous market? And when we want to see in the future, I think first of all we need to see where we stand today. So I would show a little clip about our project Kira that we launched in Darmstadt, Kreis Offenbach, and where you can see now our vehicle there on the compound that has a Mobileye technology in it. And yeah, we try to comply with the new German law at all times. And we have a permit, a test permit that allows us to have an safety driver in it or oblige us to do it. And we drive at the moment until 80 kilometers per hour here in the Frankfurt area. And what at the moment we are testing the vehicles, so we are expanding our service area. At the moment we are in test drives, and in the next year, beginning of next year, we planned to go into the first service with safety driver on board. So this is where we stay in Germany at the moment. When we look on an international level, then we see that in this three lines, top safe driving systems in the US, we have like Waymo, Cruise, and Zoox. In China, we have WeRide, Pony AI, and Apollo Baidu, and all are built in OEMs in vehicles, mainly actually from Asian OEMs. And they are all commercial on the road, fully driverless, and they have at least 1,000 vehicles on the road in the commercial and driverless mode. So in Europe, as I shown the Frontrunner project in Germany, now we have here only Mobileye. There are some others, but not on the level of those. And they have some OEMs that built in Mobileye system at the moment, and vehicles, some tens of vehicles we have here in Europe on the level 4 level. And yeah, so when you look to this, then you have to say we are quite behind the other two regions in the world who are embracing here autonomous driving. And when we come to this commercial driverless level, the others already have. Yeah, in Germany, it's regarding all the approvals. I think we will see in 2027, 2028, the first services that are fully driverless and commercial. So it still needs some years that we here in Europe come to the same level in the US or China. Maybe another European country is faster in this, but let's see. So okay. So what are the challenges in Europe to come to this level? What we see, and this is also for the other world regions, the costs are still quite high. Vehicle costs are high because we have like pre-series vehicles that are very, very cost intense. then we haven't developed the processes yet so that they are cost efficient. We have also regulations that imply costs, and data storage is also very, very cost intense. So when we want to get on a lower level of costs, which is totally normal that we are at a high level at this stage of the market where we are at the moment, we need like experience, we need scaling up the processes, and therefore we need a high number of vehicles. This is the first challenge we see at the moment. And to have a high number of vehicles, we need money. We need funding, and who can provide this funding? The autonomous industry at the moment have their own problems. They have their own challenges with different transformations. We have public companies, transport companies. They have also a lot of challenges, like the cities and communities in Germany. At the moment, we are actually reducing the public transport offer because there isn't enough money. So for innovation on a bigger scale, there is no money. And also the government always, at least in Germany, don't have any money to invest. So if we want to do it, we need to do it in the lowest possible costs. And then when we want to do it, we also need vehicles, we need production capacity. And if you have a market where the costs are too high, there's no money in the market, then the market perspective is not so good for the OEMs. So they will not invest heavily in this. And so therefore we only see some few OEMs who are going into this market, who are building up capacities. And this is not enough for a normal good market that is functioning. And then we have this EU regulation where we have like only 1,500 vehicles per OEM. This is too less to have a market perspective also. So this needs to be changed also. And to come out of this problem, we need a political target. We need to target where do we want to go with our mobility as a country? Do we want to stay at private car focused mobility, or do we want to go more into public transport? The autonomous vehicles on the autonomous industry would be a possibility to go into more public transport, to shift the model split. But we need a political target there, and then we can build upon this a strategy how we come to this political target. So what do we requirements we have for the next phase? So we saw we need a high number of vehicles. We saw we need to do it in the lowest possible costs. But we also need, if we want to develop a product for our customers, we need to see that we have the requirements of all different regional types. We have like metropolitan areas where we have other challenges, like in rural areas where we actually have at the moment the lowest level of public transport and the lowest level of offers. Therefore, we need in rural areas more development. We need special offers there, and therefore we need to take into the account not only the city centers but also the rural areas. And also, and another requirement is that we need different vehicle types. We are seeing at the moment the small cars, as you have seen in the video, an SUV, nice to look at, but we need big buses and we need something in the middle, the movers that we see. So we need to have all these vehicle types, and we need to test it, and we need to bring it together to integrated public transport concept. And therefore, different types are necessary here. And on the other hand, the restrictions, we have like a limited number of companies with the technology. We have a limited number of OEMs that are willing to invest in these topics. So we have a limited number of IT experts and of resources. So in the first phase of the market with level 3, at least in Germany, we spread like all the vehicles all over Germany. So we had like 2 vehicles in the one city, 2 vehicles in another city, and a lot of projects like this. And this is at the moment not possible, because if we have like 50 or 100 projects, then these tech companies and OEMs need like to talk to 500 different project managers, steering committees, and whatever. All this management around it would be so intense, it is not manageable. So we see at the moment the vehicles that are there, the companies who offer vehicles, they do very few projects, because this is something that is really, really difficult to achieve. And then we have this the setup costs for the AV maps, HD maps. So you need quite a time to drive in these areas to make the HD maps perfect, so that you can build upon a service on that. You need to every kilometer need to be driven a lot of times. So if you expand it now on a really huge landscape, then this will last very long, and it would be very, very cost intensive. So we need a small place where we do this. So what we need, I focus here on Germany, but I think it's for all of over Europe, it's the same. We need like model regions where we fulfill those requirements, a high number of vehicles, the lowest possible costs, all regional types, and different vehicle types. So in Germany, I think we need at least 2 model regions, like for metropolitan areas and for rural areas, to have like both extremes of the scale. And there we need to put in a lot of vehicles, and so step by step develop all these different necessities that we need for the next step. So, and coming to my last slide, what are the advantages of those model regions? First of all, we need to convince at the end our customers to use those services, to use mobility. And so we need like a showroom for the people, and this can be used or can be done with those model regions. So we also need to build a new type of offer, like in rural countrysides, also have an offer during the night. This is possible with autonomous driving. We need blueprints for that, how this integrated offer of different vehicle types would be should look like. And then we can maybe also show effects for the behavior of the people, that they really change their behavior of how to use mobility or how to conduct mobility. And then at the end, we also have, of course, a demand for the vehicles. So we have planning security for the OEMs and the other companies, and we would use the funding that are available in the most efficient way. So that was it from my side, and I'm open to questions.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Thomas. Thanks a lot for your insights. Very interesting to see your perspectives and that of Deutsche Bahn. First of all, to the audience, if you do have any questions, please write them in the Q&A and I will direct them over to Thomas. While the audience is thinking about questions, also some popped up in my head. When you talk about what you do in the Kira project, but also when you mention these model regions for metropolitan areas, but also rural areas, in what kind of scenario or use case do you foresee these automated vehicles to be integrated into the public transport network? So do you focus on like the sharing aspect as well? Do you foresee them to be kind of a feeder service within underserved areas to then bring people or give people access to larger public transport lines? Or how can we think of that?
Yeah, I think we autonomous driving will be in 20 years. Autonomous driving, I think, will be the one of the main modes to how to move a car. So what I would like to build up is something where you see the whole public transport in a with autonomous vehicles. So you have the big buses, you have like all these smaller types, and then you have on the high demand routes you have big buses. On the routes where you have like feeder services or you need point to point because there's a very low demand or during the night, then you have like on demand service with autonomous driving, ride pooling, of course. And it should also everything integrated into the rail system so that you have like a whole concept of public transport. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that. I'm just having a look at the other question that I see in the chat now slowly popping up. One question is, if everyone is waiting for all the others to move, how can we get there? Christoph. And I think he's mentioning to other countries and operators, perhaps, or we as European players.
Yeah, I would say say maybe he's referring to the funding. Yeah, we shouldn't wait. Okay. From my point of view, we need we need this is a transformation from the current state of how you have a mobility system based on private cars into a mobility system that is mainly based on public transport, based on autonomous driving, and this new system will be a lot of better in terms for the economy, for the people, for the environment. And this transformation is like needs to be funded in the first phase from the government. So we need more money from the governments because I don't see where the money is coming from otherwise.
Okay. Yeah.
But we shouldn't wait for the others. We should give it a good start. Yeah.
Another question from my side was also when you talk about we need high numbers of vehicles also for the model regions. Like what orders of magnitudes are you talking about? Imagine we take several thousands per region or for the entire
2 regions, if even each region like until 4,000, I think.
Okay. Other questions are, how do you see the role of CITS in creating and improving autonomous driving?
Oh, I didn't get that. Can you repeat, or is it indeed?
How do you see the role of CITS, intelligent transport systems, in creating and improving
what is CITS? Driving? Sorry.
Connected Intelligent Transport Systems.
Ah, okay.
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure. Okay. I'm not the expert, but the providers all say if you talk to Waymo or WeRide or Mobileye, no matter in what region, everybody says we don't need intelligent infrastructure. We have all the intelligence in the vehicle, and if the traffic light is red or green, we can see over the camera set, and therefore it's not necessary to have those technologies. And but we of course need the internet connection for it. So
in the Q&A if we progress in the presentations. One last question I want to ask is, why would you foresee that there would be more or less only AVs in public transportation? I think all we need is to ask, so why should we have AVs? What do you answer to that?
yeah, I think actually in some time we will only see autonomous vehicles because it will be in many terms better. For example, in safety for drivers and all the stuff. So yeah, it's not only public transport. I think in the future, this will last some years, some decades more. But we will come in this area where we only have autonomous vehicles. But at the moment, this is a game changer for public transport because we are facing a bottleneck of drivers, and this is increasing. The job is not attractive, and with autonomous vehicles, we create new jobs that are more attractive, that are based on technology, and so this is good for the people. It's not a bad thing.
All right, then thanks for this insight, Thomas. Thanks for your perspective on this and for answering the questions. Yeah, I motivate you to answer them in the Q&A as well if you feel to do so. But now we heard something from a very, I would say, German perspective from a very big German public transport operator, Deutsche Bahn. How are things happening over the channel on the British Islands? So over to you, Michael.
Thanks very much, Christian. Just putting my slides up. Hopefully you can see them. Oh, go to the top here. Can you see that all right?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so yes, thanks very much. My name is Michael Talbot. I'm the Deputy Head of the Centre for Connected and Autonomous Vehicles, and we are a joint policy unit between the Department for Business and Department for Transport in the UK. We were set up in 2015. I helped set the team up back then, and I lead the Department for Business side of the team. I'm going to talk a little bit through some of the activities we're doing here, where there's some talk of roadmaps. So there's I'm going to have a lot of roadmap discussion at the end. But first I'll talk about what it is that we're doing. And I think I'm not going to dwell on these slides. I think we all understand that the sort of combination of these three technology paths converging is going to unlock sort of a very important transformation, as Thomas was just discussing, in transport systems. In the UK, we sort of see this as a really important transformation for both social and economic benefits, and we can discuss that in further detail a little bit later. But what are we doing about that in the UK? So we are focused on three areas historically: ensuring safety and security, and this is around the regulatory program within the Department for Transport. The area that I lead on, which is securing the industrial and economic benefits, and I'll talk a bit more about that. And then something that probably come up in discussion, but which I have a slide that I can bring out, but I've deprioritized at the moment, is around delivering social benefits and really informing public understanding of the technology, because I think there are a lot of views and a lot of different requirements across our society, and these technologies ultimately have to serve society if they're going to be worthwhile from a government perspective. So since at the moment we've got a £66 million program going with industry. This is a mix of projects across the country. We've got some test beds where we have testing infrastructures where we've previously funded, and those are active now, from controlled, semi-controlled, and public testing environments. We also have some passenger and freight trials operating around the country. That's that sort of light blue color, and I can talk a bit about those. It's a useful mix of both passenger and freight elements there. And we're also looking in those red ones with some mass transit feasibility studies. So what are the opportunities on specific routes, perhaps to automate a public transport service? So I think that we'll come back to. And then we're also doing quite a few things on the supply chain to make sure that we have we're filling some of the gaps that we see in the market and for our requirements. So it's been a very busy year. This has been a huge year for self-driving, connected and automated mobility in the UK. That was kicked off last year when the King announced the Automated Vehicles Bill, which received royal assent in May of this year. And that was a very big month as well, because one of our sort of UK software champions, Wave, also announced that in that same month, $1 billion of Series C investment from Microsoft, NVIDIA, and SoftBank. So that was a great month for us and the sector. So the Act is based on a number of previous, a lot of work has gone into this. It hadn't come from nowhere, and it was a very strong requirement of industry. The Act itself has got 4 main areas that probably around 100 clauses. Liability, safety, marketing, licensing of passenger services are the main areas. I don't propose to go into any detail, but I do commend you to have a look at some of the material if you're interested in what we're doing. And if anyone's interested, we probably have a bit more information that we can share on that. In terms of our future focus in the UK, building on what we were already doing, that earlier map, the very interesting report came out, funded by Innovate UK, the UK's innovation agency, and published by the Society of Motor Vehicle Manufacturers and Traders in November of last year. And that was really looking at the CAM economic opportunities for the UK. And in that, I think we have really focused in, or we're likely to increasingly focus in on and off-road logistics and passenger services on the strength of the fact that those are the largest emerging markets. But we also have some other interesting challenges to look at, because this is, as everyone will appreciate, is a much wider and broader and more important opportunity than robo-taxis and passenger cars. On the supply chain, we're looking across the piece at a number of areas, and this is building on some great intelligence from Zenzik, which is a part government-funded not-for-profit, and they do a lot of really important market studies and insight research that provide us some really important information as we develop our policy and refine our policy. And certainly I do recommend you look at the supply chain work. But moving on to some of the sort of pulling the curtain back on the roadmap angle, this is a roadmap that Zenzik published back in 2019. And I think what was sort of groundbreaking internationally, I think many people will be familiar with it, is that it brought together the social and legislative side at the top, vehicle roadmaps, infrastructure roadmaps, and service roadmaps. And no one that we're aware of had tried to do that before. And this was informed by something, it said 150, but I think we eventually got up to around 200 organizations across all sectors contributing to shaping that. And that helped set the sector understand terminology, because obviously telecommunications and vehicle manufacturers often talk about similar things in different ways, often using different timelines. So how does this roadmap work? I think this is also where it became really interesting. What they explored through the roadmap was a sort of a golden thread, I think is how we described it, of how you would explore your a particular company or local authority or agency view through that, and you could explore that journey, this golden thread, through the messy bit, which is the 600 relationships in the roadmap. And there is a tool for doing that. The challenge that we faced was that was actually really hard to use. So Zenzik spent a lot of time talking to, in this case, Logistics UK, and they drew out some of these key questions about how are the benefits of unattended delivery going to be achieved, and then going through with them, so to sort of develop sector views through the roadmap to provide a bit more intelligence, aggregating that point of view, and that culminated last year in the publication of the updated roadmap, and we extended the timeline out to 2035 and reflected some of the changes in the market. And they've taken a rather different approach in terms of the complexity of the previous roadmap, which I loved, and was extremely helpful for us to understand some of the prioritization that we need to understand in government. Which thing will happen first? What do we need to do to unblock a particular requirement from industry? So what's the nearest and greatest requirement? And they've moved into a slightly different perspective to, I think, make it a bit more straightforward to those companies that might not be up to familiar with the detail of the automated future. And there's quite a few different things that we would look at in that, and you can see that public transport vehicles and services are highlighted here. Now that we've got still more roadmaps to go. So earlier this year, it was about 6 weeks ago, Zenzik's parent company, sister company, the Advanced Propulsion Centre, in conjunction with the UK Automotive Council, published a mobility of goods roadmap. And this is part of a suite of really detailed technology roadmaps that go into electrification, charge points, historically into ICE, engine requirements. Several of those have been translated into a number of other languages in the past. I'm not sure quite where they are with that at the moment. I suspect they're working on it. Japanese, for instance, I know is one that they have done in the past. And there's quite a list of roadmaps that then can help us. And in parallel with that, mobility of goods and mobility of people. And what's really important about this is that this marks something of a change in their approach, and that historically they'd have looked at particular technology challenges around the engine, the electric vehicle, or something along those lines. The big change this year has been that higher level systemic view of mobility of people and mobility of goods. And I think that's a really interesting change for us to make. And I think the other important thing about this document is, or these roadmaps, are that they reflect in the UK a broad industry consensus, not just within the automotive sector, but certainly within the work that we're doing with Zenzik, insurance, telecoms, local government, simulation companies, software companies, tier ones, OEMs, and others. I thought I might wind up a little bit early because I just wanted to stimulate some discussion. So I thought I'd do very quickly with the time I've got left, talk very quickly about some of the other things that we're doing around public engagement. So this was a project we did a couple of years ago, and this was picking up on what Thomas was saying. We took some automated vehicles around the country to areas where they had probably never been seen before. In fact, I think that was one of the reasons they were chosen, except with Manchester. So we went to Alnwick in the northeast of the UK. They went to the southwest of the UK, and then they went more or less into the middle of the UK, and they chose a mix of regions, rural, urban, suburban, to talk to the public, not about here's the technology and you will now use it. It's more like, what are your transport problems and how might these technologies help you solve them? So it became very specific and personal, geographically appropriate to those individuals. And they've got a really interesting mix. They put brain scanning equipment. You could see some people wearing that so that they could understand how people were responding to the technology. So they might say they were comfortable, they might have been terrified, or vice versa. So there's some really valuable intelligence we've gathered from that, and more recently we have set up PAVE UK, similar to PAVE Europe, and that is another really interesting area to make sure that the public is brought with us on this journey, because that, as we will come on to, I'm sure, is a really key component of public understanding of the technology. If they won't buy it, then we've wasted a vast opportunity. And then the last thing I think I probably wanted to touch on, this is probably more of a request for advice if anyone has any information. We've done some work on how self-driving and connected technologies might help decarbonize the transport system. And some of our initial work has highlighted that it's highly complex. So this is what this illustrates is complexity. There are 38 different mechanisms. Some will increase carbon, some will decrease carbon, and I think in our role in government is to constrain those increases and to enable those decreases so that we can use these technologies to help decarbonize our transport system, because it is a really important part for us to meet our statutory requirements for decarbonization here in the UK, as highlighted by some of the zero emission vehicles mandates and our legislative targets for 2050 and the like. So I'll stop there and turn things over to questions. I think I've just about finished on time. And I've spoken very quickly, so I apologize for that. So I think I just wanted to stimulate some discussion, and I will circulate these slides after.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Michael. Thanks for your insights. Yeah, more from a British national government perspective, if I'm not mistaken. While the audience maybe thinks about further questions, I, of course, also have some, especially about the last slide that you just showed, where you kind of give an outlook of, the potential, CO2 or like general road emissions when it comes to automated mobility. There are a lot of like factors influencing such a system, of course, but can you kind of give a worst and a best example of when would we see the least amount of emissions or the biggest amount of emission savings, and when would we see like the worst kind of emission being produced?
So I think with discussions with industry, I think we need to develop the evidence base. It's very partial, very fragmented. There's huge gaps. So we've got an outline of a puzzle, and we've probably got a fraction of the pieces. But we get this sense that actually, if we pull all these things together in the right way, policy has a really important role to play in this. You could save up to 20% of carbon in the transport system, and you could do that. Some of that you can get on with connected technologies. So what are the risks? So the risks, and this is where if there's a policy failure, might be around a disorderly deployment of the technology, so that suddenly the streets are filled with self-driving technologies that either maybe are not working correctly or are driving around with nothing in them, blocking up the roads, adding to congestion problems, drawing on draining sort of important energy from a system that could be used elsewhere. There's also induced demand. If these technologies operate as we hope they will, they should make journeys easier and cheaper, and that is likely to make more journeys. So, for instance, those who are disabled, we understand, take significantly fewer journeys as the rest of the society. A very good social outcome would be that if someone who's visually impaired, or for instance, my aging parents who don't travel very much, if they could travel as much as anyone else, that has a carbon cost, because then there's greater emissions. but I think no one would argue that that's a bad thing. I think that's a social benefit that I think we would all support. But the greatest opportunity is around aggregating these little bits of good news. So route planning, reduction of congestion, perhaps by using green light optimization, all these sorts of things, bringing together driving efficiency. We understand in one of the publicly funded fleets that the fuel efficiency of the worst driver and the best driver is about 25% difference. So these technologies should drive as well, if not better, than the best driver in the fleet. So there's some big savings that can be made. Some of them can be made quite early. We don't necessarily have to wait for electrification, net zero for all of those. So I think that I could go on for hours on all these things. So I should warn you. I'll stop there.
We heard earlier from Thomas about, let's say, the vision of Deutsche Bahn when it comes to how, these vehicles should be deployed. He says he wants to see thousands of vehicles in larger model regions, both in the metropolitan areas, but also in rural areas. What is your vision like, or what's the CCAV's vision of how this should look like in the 10 to 20 year future?
So I think there's sort of an industry view, and then there's a government view. So again, returning to the fact that these technologies have to serve society. So I think that's why our focus is on passenger transit. I think there's and the on and off road logistics. So for instance, in the UK, we have driver shortages in both those areas. In the logistics sector, the average age of drivers is going up year on year, which is to say there aren't enough people coming in, young people coming into the sector, and that average age is now getting pretty serious. So the economy will grind to a halt if you can't move things around. So we have to find a solution to some of these problems. I think ultimately, I think it also comes down to choice. I think this is something that Tom's talking a little about. How would we like to see this? I think it's going to be a very long time. It may never be desirable to have a fully automated transport system because it may never be achievable as well for all sorts of reasons. I think it comes because of customer choice and society's choice. Some people will always want to drive. You've got the petrol heads, the sort of Jeremy Clarksons of this world, who will want to drive their car even when it's everyone else is doing something else. I think we've seen these transitions before, from horseless carriages, horse-drawn to horseless carriages, and now we're going from human-driven to automated. So I think it will be about choice. So for instance, on bus routes, you might say, to begin with, maybe every fourth or fifth bus on a particular route might be automated, and that will give people who are uncomfortable with the technology the opportunity to take a human-driven bus. But then you might increase that as people's comfort levels rise. I think that those are the sorts of things that I think we probably need to be thinking about. And I think definitely agree with Thomas that you need different modes of transport. You need to make sure that they're joining up together with rail. Active travel is a massive part. Accessibility is a really significant priority for us. And I think that's what's exciting about this transformation, is that it really can change things for the better if we get it right. But there's a lot of things we need to do.
Helen Server in the or Sarver, if I'm pronouncing correctly, in the Q&A is suggesting to aim for a small number of small to medium-sized communities and completely convert them into AV public transport to demonstrate their full potential. What's your stance on that?
I agree that you need a regional approach first. I think spreading things thin is unlikely to get you the result that you want. So we have projects in Cambridge, Birmingham, for automated passenger transit, as well as Edinburgh. We've got a licensed bus service that is automated. It still has a human safety driver, but it's a complex 14-mile route that it's doing, and it's carried thousands of passengers since it started. The ones in Cambridge and Birmingham are smaller routes. There's another one in Belfast as well, but we're also looking at some logistics ones in Sunderland and a passenger project up in Sunderland as well. So, and I think there's a big opportunity in some of those sorts of areas, because you need the local government, the local authorities to be supportive. Because again, it won't happen. They're in charge of things in the UK about licensing the technologies and communicating it to their public. So that, I think, is the strength of having that local focus, and then trying to make sure that it's reaching out to those rural areas that are underserved. So maybe suburban areas that where we've got in the UK and probably other countries. I know that we tore up a lot of our train tracks 50, 60 years ago. I might be able to use some of those rail beds. By the same token, we also have some bus services that are no longer financially viable. Many of them are heavily subsidized anyway, but actually these technologies may help us tip the balance back into running a service that wouldn't otherwise run.
Thanks a lot, Michael. Thanks for your insights and contributions. Again, there are a few more questions in the chat that we unfortunately won't have time for, but Michael, if you feel like answering them in the Q&A, feel free to do so. Thanks a lot, Michael. We now come, we move back to Germany from a national government's perspective down to a public transport hands-on perspective again. So Julian from the Bahnen of Monheim will share his experiences with automated vehicles from Monheim. So yeah, please kick it off.
Yeah, hi everyone. First of all, I'm very happy to be here to have the possibility to share some insights and even more to share the perspective of a quite small public transportation operator. My presentation is about 4 years driving the future, a little bit pioneering autonomous mobility in Monheim and Rhein. I would like to share some experiences, some lessons learned, and a future outlook with you guys. And yeah, I'm looking forward for the discussion afterwards. Yeah, well, first, short introduction of myself. Well, I'm Julian Sinjano. I'm head of business development at the PTO of the city of Monheim. I'm an engineer by training with quite a bit of experience in the automotive industry as well as mobility consulting. And now we are pioneering autonomous mobility here in Monheim. For those who do not know us, we are a PTO of a quite small city. We have about 9 lines, 45 buses, 150 employees, and something that might be, quite nice to see is that we have 6 autonomous shuttles. Until last week, we had 9. So it was the largest fleet in operations in Europe, I think. Now we're down to 6 back again. And yeah, well, it's not about me. It's not about the company. It's about our Altstadtstromer, our project with autonomous shuttles and autonomous mobility here in Monheim am Rhein. As the last speaker, it's my burden to keep it in time. I will do my best. But before I start sharing, I would like to take you along the route and make a quick recap. What happened so far? So I just want to talk about the past 4 years. But here in Monheim, we started with autonomous mobility way before that. We started at the end of 2017 with a resolution of the city council. So this whole project is quite government-driven and political-driven. And I mean, that's a very important fact. We'll come to it back later. And within a few months, almost a year, we could start the operations. So it was the tender preparation and the EU-wide tender in just a few months. And 2020, we started with an approval and all the permits we needed. We started our operations in the city of Monheim, driving around a route I will show you in a few seconds. What I want to show you with this roadmap is that after we started, we kept it going. And I mean, we kept iterating and optimizing the route every few months and trying to improve speed, improve customer experience, improve operations, integrate new technologies, integrate self-validation of crossings, self-validations of passenger crossings, and so on and so on. And I mean, that's one of my main points for today. One of the most important things is to stick with it. You have to be willing to take risks and just keep it going. I mean, that's one of the most important things we all have to do to get those kind of technologies on the road. Well, I have quite a big red dot on that roadmap. It's the end of the technical capabilities of the current vehicles. We're using easy mile, easy 10 vehicles, and the Gen 3 we had could do the self-validations on more than 5 crossings and everything, but it's still not level 4. It's the end of the technical capabilities of those cars and vehicles. And now it's a good moment to have this kind of presentation, because now the look out into the future, what should we do next? But first, a little bit of our line at a glance, just very quickly, so every one of you knows what do we do here in Monheim. It's to be honest, a quite short route, about 1.7 kilometers with 8 stops. But the important thing is that we link together the central bus stations with the old city center. So we have at least 2 vehicles always running an operation at the same time. It's a daily operations from 9 to 9, at the weekends until 11, and we have a 10-minute cycle. And at that point, I often get asked, Julian, what do we need to do to have a ride with your shuttles? And it's simple as that. You just have to go to the bus station, wait maximum 10 minutes, and you can jump in. So it's part of the public transport as any other bus route here in Monheim as well. In the last 4 years, we drove over 250,000 kilometers in operations. So there's more kilometers in total with testing, show runs, and stuff like that. We had over 80,000 passengers, over 50,000 hours of operations. And also very important, we have over 50 trained operators. So the operators are the bus drivers. They can have an extra training and actually earn some extra money running and being operator of their autonomous bus lines. More than that, we have 2 trainers of our own and 3 designers. So we have people that used to drive buses and now are able to deploy autonomous bus lines into real environments. So it's quite nice. In addition of the traditional operations, we are also involved in many kind of different projects. I took some of them to show you because I think there are quite the more important ones. First of all, the show project, it's ending right now. It's a project about sharing experience, Europe-wide project about sharing the experiences, performing interviews, optimizing operation and the dissemination of information about autonomous mobility. On the other hand, we have SafeStream. It's the project about the interpretation of regulations and the development of the supervision model, a supervision center, how it should look like, how it works. And beginning of the next year, we will start some test trails with a dedicated vehicle. But we also have a project called Diversify CCAM. It's about developing guidelines for the introduction of autonomous mobility, taking into account politics, culture, and geography. I think around CCAM, it's quite a technical cluster, and CCAM drives into taking into account also politics, governance, people living around. Every stakeholder is needed to get autonomous mobility into reality. And upcoming as well, some other projects. Here, the one about the influence of new technologies on the traditional job profiles of the public transport company. I will get to that a little bit later as well. Well, what's next? As I said before, we reached the end of the technical capabilities of the current vehicles. So now there's not much we can do about the car, the vehicle itself, even less as a public transportation operator. We are not manufacturers. We are not an institute able to further develop those cars. But we can still stick with the whole topic and try to find new questions to be answered around it. It's like, how should the technical supervision look like? How are the processes going to work? And at the beginning of 2026, the permits we have for the current operating vehicles will expire. So at this moment, we are preparing for applying for new funding, preparing new vehicle tender. And as Thomas said in his presentation, the first presentation today, yeah, I'm not sure if it's gonna work out to have a seamless operations after the beginning of 2026, but we will try it and we'll do our best. Let's see how it works out. But on top of all the things I showed you about our line and things we want to do and we were doing, I wanted to share some lessons learned as well. And there's one thing I think we have learned quite intensively. It's not only about technology. It's also about the operations. So you have to take into account that just the availability of a technology does not mean you can use it and it will work right away. So even if we had those 5, 6, 10,000 autonomous vehicles, there's a lot of things you have to consider for running a smooth operations, just like the integration of new process and new job profiles into an existing environment. You have to face new regulations and new challenges for acquiring permits. You will have unforeseen costs. I mean, in our example, here in our operations, we needed to build a new garage. We need to buy a new trailer. We need to buy new spare parts and a lot of things like that. And you need to have a designated operation area. It's also about the workshop, something I think we always miss in this kind of discussion. We have a new type of vehicle, it's a new type of repairs. And at our workshops, our guys are able to calibrate lidars, something they didn't know about 4 years ago. You have the troubleshooting of an autonomous driving system is quite complex, and you have to challenge that. Something we really learned the hard way is that we have to establish preventive maintenance. So we need to get ahead of defects, and we need to, for example, keep the suspension very well maintained, and otherwise we'll have quite a big problems in the driving of the autonomous shuttles. Also, as a whole new type of spare parts, sensors and computers and everything like that. Besides our own problems like operations and workshop, it's also about politics. Don't forget that. You need the acceptance and support of all stakeholders, as well as internal as also as external ones. And a good experience we made is to involve every one of them very early into the process and have a good cooperative work ethic. Maybe that's one of the main points why we are still running this operation here in Monheim after more than 4 years, because we involve everyone into the whole process of the permits, of the operations and everything around it very, very early. So everyone knew what they were getting into, and I think that's why they keep pushing us forward to keep this line going. You definitely need a strong communication into local government. So like if there anything needs to be done on the infrastructure side, you need like a direct line to those guys to help you out as quickly as they can. And I think that's a no-brainer. You need to convince and show the added value for the city and the region. I mean, if we didn't have this line, this operation with autonomous vehicles, I won't be here speaking to you. And we have about 25% of the passengers we carried around are tourists. They come to Monheim just to have a glance of this kind of technology. But at the end, I work at the public transportation operator, and Thomas said it before, I think it's one of the most important things. It's about our passengers. We need to promote acceptance and demonstrate those new technologies. We heard it before also from Michael. We need to make the future tangible for everyone and give a feeling where we're heading. It's very, very important. And last but not least, we need to prove the added value for the passenger. So with this in mind, what's up until 2026? On my side, on the Bahnen Monheim side, yeah, we need to continue to train, or we will continue to train and empower employees to deal with the challenges of new technologies. That's, in my opinion, one of the most important things. We need to complete the integration and commissioning of the technical supervision in order to, as soon as we get our hands on a level 4 capable car, we can run it. On the other side, we need to investigate new processes like approval and testing and find further applications for this kind of technology in order to make it more profitable. And yeah, also very, very important, we need to deliver greater added value for the passenger. And with that, I do not only mean a better service, but a better customer journey in its whole. Yeah, well, and beyond. Actually, I don't know. I hope we will be able to run level 4 operations and keep improving our fleet, keep pushing it forward, and yeah, just make the future tangible and real here in Monheim. And that's the end of my presentation. I mean, I think I have the 15 minutes right on point. And on that, I would like to invite every one of you, if you like, to come to Monheim and get in touch with me. And let's see how we can make autonomous mobility and public transportations happen.
Thanks a lot, Julian. Very interesting to hear from your experiences and also your future plans, especially. While the audience again thinks of some questions for Julian and yeah, his experiences and plans, I also wrote down some questions by myself. On one slide, you very prominently highlighted the need to prove the added value for the passenger.
Yeah.
And maybe I want to challenge you there a bit, because imagine the service that you would provide is similar, just without a driver, or even better, because it's demand responsive than the status quo, or like fixed bus lines, or even if they're with a driver and demand responsive. Shouldn't you instead prove like cost competitiveness in the long run as a public transport operator?
Yeah, you always have to prove the cost competitive, but public transportation, it's about the people. It's about the need of mobility. And if we just keep it as it is and take a driver out of the bus and let it ride without a driver, we won't change anything. We'll still have millions and millions of people driving around in their own cars. And that's a dystopian picture. So we need to show the added value. We need to show the people, hey, this is a technology that could revolutionize public transport, and it could revolutionize the way you think about mobility. And that's where we need to go, in my opinion.
You also mentioned a new tender with the potential of new services, new vehicles being potentially launched in the future. Couple of questions. What, if you could put some requirements out there, what kind of vehicle would you love to see? What would be the must-haves?
Yeah, it would be nice if those vehicles were based on a known model, like a model of an OEM, like from a bus company or something like that. That would be very nice. Because one of the biggest issues we had the last year were on the technical side. So using like very, very small series, every one of those vehicles is unique and has unique problems, and we need to get away from that.
Okay. Does Bahnen Monheim have the ambition to become a fully automated public transport operator?
Sure. Otherwise, we won't be doing that. I think that's a vision. It's very far away in the future. But you need a vision just to get your thoughts straight and to pick the right projects in order to develop your business the right way. So that's why I say, yeah, of course, I want to be a fully automated PTO. and delivered so we can deliver the best service for passengers.
Have you ever studied how many vehicles you would need, assuming you have the perfect vehicle available?
Well, it depends on the size of the vehicles and the concept of your service. So at the moment, I need 40 big buses, and I will need like maybe 20, 30 small buses to make like a perfect. So nobody in Monheim will need a car ever again, but no, not really.
Okay, thanks. Before we move on, let's pick a question from the audience. There's a question, if the vehicles that you're using, are they also in the process of getting a similar type approval from the German authority?
No. Well, not the vehicles we are using. The vehicles we are using are, like I showed before, about 4 or 5 years old. So like 4 years older than the actual regulations, current regulations we have right now. And I think EasyMile won't try to get those vehicles through this process. I think they're working on a new sensor stack and trying to get a new vehicle on that. To fulfill the regulations at the moment, you need a type approved vehicle, and then you can get the approval on the autonomous driving system on top of that. And those shuttles are not type approved, so no.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Julian, for your insights from Monheim.
Sure.
Again, also to you, please have a look at the Q&A and see if you are able to answer some of the questions that we were not able to answer verbally. You can see my screen again, right? Perfect. So now the fun part starts. So we have a bit of an interactive session as well prepared for all of you today. I would ask you to please scan this QR code. We have a set of questions on Slido for you that will serve us as a discussion starter, and we will also involve our speakers in commenting about the audience feedback. So let's see how that works. The second time I'm using Slido, so let's see if I can pull it off. I will activate the pool now. I think we have 5 questions. And here is, well, it starts. Here it starts. There we go. Okay, dear audience, if you could look into a crystal ball and estimate what the 3 most advanced companies that are able to provide automated driving technology be in 2030 in the market, which ones would they be? We'll give you a few seconds. It's a shame we don't have elevator music in the background. Thomas, maybe already looking at as the answers are coming in, what is your perspective on that? How do you think about this as a very big public transport operator with, thinking about thousands of vehicles?
Yeah, as I shown in the presentation before, I think those are one of the big companies who will lead the industry sector. Waymo, WeRide, Mobileye, maybe Tesla. Let's see. And I'm referring here only to the technology part.
And as a public transport operator, I wrote down, do you consider like collaborations with like competing providers of maybe like private robotaxi services, which are kind of, in competition to traditional public transport, but maybe can also be a complement to it. So how do you approach that?
Yeah, this is if we have if we cooperating with those companies, I don't know. But I think in a bigger perspective, the cities should, because I think we have like a volume that of public transport that needs to be transported, volume of people, and from my perspective, we could use like Waymo, like the big like Uber, who are then investing into fleets. And the most important thing for us as a public transport company or sector is that we integrate them into our system, so that there is not a competition between us and them, or that is it like a volume that's needed, and there are concessions, and everybody can apply for those concessions, so that we also use the money and the investment from the private sector.
Julian and Michael, anything to respond to that?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. To be honest, to get back on that slido, which 3 companies will lead the market, advanced autonomous driving technology by 2030, in my opinion, doesn't matter. Someone will, and we need to get it into it. From my point of view, that's the point of view of a small PTO.
I mean, from my perspective, I think it will vary, I think, from use case to use case. I think we're seeing some really interesting use case specializations coming through. I have to say I'm gratified to see a couple of UK companies in this list, so I would not argue with against having Wave or Oxbotica, now known as Oxail, on that list. But yeah, we've got a couple of others. So Tesla, Fusion Processing working on the bus automation, and then Origo, which is doing some really interesting things in airport automation, but as well as historically done some really interesting passenger automation. But yeah, it's a really difficult one. I think if you look back, it's often a good way to look forward is to the early OEM days, 120 years ago. There's a lot of consolidation of the market. A lot of the early brands are no longer with us. So I think I'd expect to see quite a lot of change over the next 10 years or so, particularly as these things start to come to market.
All right, thanks. Then let's have a look at the next question. Dear audience, what do you think? Put yourself into the shoes of a public transport operator. When would you or should you stop buying conventional buses and only consider buying fully driverless vehicles in general as a public transport operator? Of course, that's a very tricky question. No one really knows, but let's see what kind of years you can come up with. And Michael, maybe as we see the answers coming in, how does that correlate with the Sensig roadmap, for example, that you presented earlier? Like these kind of timeframes.
So I think for us, I guess we'd like, people to start with some of the network operators to start buying some of these technologies now, so that they can understand how they might work on their networks. But the price point needs to come down. We know one network operator confided that there's a line that they run. The price is £2 per journey, and they subsidize that journey another £25 on top. So those are some pretty punchy business. Could tip the balance quite quickly in certain applications. But 2030 is where the CAM Economic Opportunities report that I referenced earlier is when it sort of suggests that passenger transport will become sort of that's where the estimated use case deployment year will sort of start to reach that proper commercial scale. Always ambitious.
You and Thomas, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say as soon as the vehicle costs are getting down and the service costs are getting down, we need to break even between autonomous services and driver-based services, and this is something we need to work on. And I hope it won't last so long. I hope that we get there sooner than 2035. But we need to see it.
Well, I put a little bit of a contradictive statement now here. It's quite funny. It's classic innovation storytelling and innovation management. We're almost there. Just wait for another 5 years. It's always 5 to 10 years, always. And we heard it with electric cars and so on and so on. And I think we need to look at the right use case and try to do the best we can now, because we need to be prepared. It doesn't matter if you get the cars and they are cheaper or whatever, but we're not prepared as an organization, as a PTO, then it won't use anything. So as soon as you can, with the right use case.
All right, then let's look at the other questions. Maybe Thomas already presented that earlier in his slide deck. Essentially, the key factors that are holding Europe's deployment back in terms of automated vehicle deployments compared to the memos in the US and China, where we see sometimes 100,000 commercially driven trips per week by Waymo, for example. So what are the key factors holding Europe back, I wonder? And Thomas, is that in line with what we saw on your slide earlier?
Yeah, let's wait. It's still moving. Maybe I start with point 4. This seems to be quite stable. I think also public acceptance and trust is not the problem. When I see customers or people sitting in a vehicle, if it's in Waymo or in China or in our vehicles, everybody's is like says, "Oh wow, that's really exciting," but it isn't exciting. It's very boring. People are getting in, they're driving like usual drivers, and after some minutes, everybody's taking his mobile phone out and answering emails or something. And because it's boring, it's just driving. It drives like a human driver, and therefore, everybody who is now frightened of entering a car, please enter it, and you will see it's very, 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 very easy. Yeah. And not risky at all. And yeah, I agree on the other side here. The investments, I said this is exactly from my point of view the main problem at the moment.
Yeah, I'm with Thomas. I'm with Thomas on that. Public acceptance is not a problem. It's not the issue. With still with my statement, we need to show the added value, but the customer does not have any problems with the autonomous driving vehicle. Investment in innovation is always a big issue. And maybe there is a 5th point that could be added on the next time. It's they're willing to take risks.
Thanks, Julian and Thomas. Yeah, very cool to hear your thoughts on this. I have one more question for you, but also for the audience. I'm just going to read it out loud. In accelerating the large-scale deployment of automated public transport, what should EU transport authorities do now? Should they embrace the readily available technologies that are not from the EU, but are maybe from China, from the US, or beyond, to be able to implement now? Or should those authorities basically wait for European manufacturers, OEMs, to develop and provide EU-based solution, but also accepting potential delays in deployment in that case. And the second option is, of course, option B. Just forgot the B. Julian, what do you think? What should authorities do? What would you do? I think you mentioned before already, right?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question. It's so contradictory. I love it. And indeed, I was pushing like hell, telling everyone, hey, we need to start now and at any cost, and you need to be willing to take risks. But reading these questions, it's like, okay, then you have to put a lot of thought in that. So actually, I'm not sure. I think we need to move fast. We cannot wait, because the problems we are having in our sector, public transportation, they are not going to be less in the next 5-10 years. So we cannot wait until someone figures something out. We need to act, but maybe not at any cost.
My question.
Sorry, go ahead. Just, I mean, from my perspective, I think the UK, I think the way we look at this, so I think we recognize that some areas we have a leadership opportunity in some aspects of the supply chain where we can be among world leaders and we can supply into that, not just the UK, but that global supply chain. There's some other areas where we're not competitive and we have to use technologies that are made elsewhere. I think it's also understanding which areas of the supply chain would be a bad idea not to have sovereign capabilities in. So there are going to be certain areas where you need to have your own understanding of how your own solutions. So it's probably managing those three things is the challenge that we face.
I would answer this with a question, with another question, because which non-EU technologies which EU technologies we see, because with the technology on the level of Waymo and WeRide and Mobileye, there isn't any in Germany or in the rest of Europe. I don't see any. Would be happy if somebody showed me one. And there are some smaller companies who have started, who are now like in a phase where they needed to invest a lot of money to get on the same level, and the others are not waiting for them. So if we really want this, then we need something like Airbus, that the whole European Union, all the big companies, countries and companies come together, invest a lot of money, and then develop it. If it would work, I don't know. But this would be needed to come on the same level of the others that I just mentioned. And yeah, I think it would be nice if we had some, but what we now need is at least to get the European manufacturers in this stage, in these services, so that at least the vehicles come from us. The technology, I doubt we will manage that, but the vehicles is a possibility for European manufacturers, and this is something. Therefore, we need the big scale demonstrations, large scale demonstrations.
Yeah, I think you mentioned some good points, and the Airbus example is something I haven't heard before as well. I think also the audience is a bit conflicted. There's a trend towards option A, but it's not there's still some people that would also favor European manufacturers being in the leading position. But indeed, maybe the way forward is indeed to look at the vehicle and the software components separately. And I also saw a comment in the chat where Alan Server says, or he thinks that an overarching public-private partnership and roadmap for global implementation is needed or essential, or even on a European scale. And Michael's presentation embodied what he thinks will make the difference. So that's also interesting to see. All right. I'm afraid we are running out of time. Thank you all so much for these very interesting discussions. Thanks also to our audience for providing some thought-provoking questions as well. Thanks, Julian. Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Thomas, for presenting your insights today. It was great to have you on our Ultimo webinar today. Also, thanks to Daria and Dominique from UATP in the background, doing all the organizational part. I hope to see you all in our third webinar, which I think is going to take place somewhere beginning of next year. So yeah, thank you everyone so much, and see you around the world or very soon. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.